I didn't realize how close I came to something truly bad until it was already over. Even now, weeks later, the memory still makes my stomach tighten every time I think about it. I was 21 at the time, and I had just moved into my first place alone. A small apartment building not far from where my parents lived. I'd never lived by myself before, so everything about that night felt unfamiliar and slightly overwhelming, even though I was excited. The building itself was small, only 3 floors high, with 6 apartments total. The only unit available when I applied was on the top floor, so I didn't have much choice. By the time I finished hauling all my boxes inside, I was exhausted but relieved. For the first time that night, I finally had a moment to breathe. It was already late, somewhere around 10 p.m., and I still hadn't eaten or set up my bed. I didn't have much food yet, so I settled for instant noodles. I turned on the stove, filled a pot with water, and waited for it to boil. That's when I heard it. A faint creak coming from the floor just outside my apartment. At first, I tried to brush it off. Old buildings make noise, right? But something about it felt deliberate, like footsteps slowing down right in front of my door. I hesitated for a few seconds before deciding to check. If someone needed something, it would be rude not to answer. I opened the door carefully. "Hello?" I said quietly. A few feet away stood an older man, facing away from me. He was positioned directly in front of the apartment across the hall from mine, so I assumed he lived there. For a moment, he didn't react at all. Then he slowly turned his head, muttered a quick apology, and began walking down the stairs. I closed my door and went back to the kitchen, but a strange uneasiness settled in my chest. What bothered me was the fact that he never actually entered the neighboring apartment. There was no reason for anyone to be on the top floor unless they lived there. Still, I tried to ignore the feeling. I finished cooking, ate my dinner, and reminded myself that this was supposed to be a happy milestone. My first night living alone. I didn't want to ruin it by letting my imagination run wild. Once my bed was set up, I turned off the lights and lay down, scrolling through my phone until I drifted off. I'm not exactly sure what time I fell asleep. Sometime close to midnight, I think. What I do remember clearly is waking up suddenly and checking the clock. It read 1:29 a.m. I had been startled awake by a sound from the apartment below me. Soft, dragging footsteps, as if someone were moving slowly across the floor. I stayed completely still, listening. A few minutes passed, and then I heard it again. The same creak from the hallway outside my door. My heart started racing. I replayed the earlier moment in my head, trying desperately to remember if I had locked the door after answering it that night. I lay there in silence, barely breathing. Then I heard a quiet click. Someone was trying to turn my doorknob. It didn't move. The lock held. After a few seconds that felt much longer than they were, I heard another door open nearby and then close again. Everything went quiet. Shaking, I got out of bed and checked my front door. It was locked. I told myself it must have been the same older man, maybe confused about which apartment was his. Eventually, I managed to fall back asleep. In the morning, I was jolted awake by a loud knock at my door. When I opened it, 2 police officers were standing in the hallway. They asked if I had noticed anything strange during the night or if anything was missing from my apartment. A man had broken into 2 units in the building. Both doors had been left unlocked. I told them everything I could remember. They thanked me and left. I never found out if they caught him. Nothing else happened after that, but the thought still lingers. I can't stop wondering what might have happened if I hadn't locked my door. That wasn't the first time I'd felt that kind of fear. When I was around 10 or 11, my family lived at the end of a quiet road that bordered a massive forest. The area behind our house was thick with trees, darker and denser than any woods I'd seen before. My friends and I spent hours back there, exploring, playing games, and wandering deeper than we probably should have. Some parts of the forest were so tightly packed that walking side by side was nearly impossible. You constantly had to step ahead or fall behind just to squeeze between the trees. One Friday evening, I invited my best friend over since there was no school the next day. By the time he arrived, the sun was already sinking low. We decided to spend a little time in the woods before it got too dark. We grabbed heavy-duty flashlights and headed in. After walking for about 15 minutes, we found a fallen tree and sat down, talking about nothing in particular. It was something we did often, just sitting there surrounded by trees, losing track of time. I don't know how long we stayed there, but when I finally looked up, the forest was almost completely swallowed by darkness. At first, neither of us panicked. We knew the area well enough and figured we could make it back easily. We turned on our flashlights and started walking. Still, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. The forest was eerily quiet, broken only by the crunch of leaves beneath our feet. Our flashlights barely cut through the darkness, illuminating just a few feet ahead, while the trees pressed in around us from every side. We hadn't gone very far when everything changed. After just a couple of minutes of walking, both of us stopped at the exact same time. Somewhere ahead, we heard it, the unmistakable sound of someone moving slowly through dry leaves. Whoever it was couldn't have been far, no more than a few yards in front of us, hidden behind the trees. My first thought was simple and deeply unsettling. Why would anyone be wandering alone through the forest this late at night? We stood still, listening. I tried to steady my breathing, hoping the footsteps would continue moving away. For a moment, it sounded like they did. Then, suddenly, the noise stopped completely. My friend and I turned to each other, frozen. The silence felt heavy, unnatural, like the forest itself was holding its breath. As I stared at him, a sharp wave of dread rushed through my body, the kind of instinctual fear that tells you something is very wrong. Almost immediately after, I heard leaves crunching again. This time, it was behind us. I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I ran. I took off toward my house as fast as I could, pushing through the darkness. My shoulders scraped against tree trunks as I stumbled forward, barely able to see where I was going. The forest felt tighter now, closing in on me from all sides. Behind me, I heard footsteps. They were fast. Too fast. I wanted to believe it was my friend chasing after me, but I couldn't bring myself to look back. My chest burned, my legs ached, and my heart felt like it was going to burst. After what felt like an eternity, maybe half a minute, the footsteps suddenly veered sharply to the right and faded into the distance. That realization terrified me even more. If those footsteps weren't my friend's, then where was he? I burst into my backyard and rushed inside through the back door, slamming it shut behind me. I stood there, gasping for air, shaking. I moved to the window and stared out into the darkness, waiting, hoping to see my friend emerge from the trees. Minutes passed. He didn't appear. That's when my parents came downstairs, alarmed by the look on my face. I tried to explain what had happened, my words tumbling over each other. Before I could finish, the doorbell rang from the front of the house. My dad cautiously opened the door. My friend pushed past him and ran inside. He told us that after I sprinted away, he froze, unsure of what to do. While standing there, he heard two distinct sets of footsteps chasing after me. After a few moments, he forced himself to move and ran in the same direction, terrified he might be alone in the woods. My parents called the police, but nothing ever came from it. No reports, no answers. Years later, my friend and I still talk about that night, endlessly speculating about what or who was out there. Part of me wishes I had turned around to see what was chasing me, but I know the truth. In a forest that dense, I wouldn't have made it more than a few steps without crashing straight into a tree. That experience stayed with me. Even now, forests at night make my skin crawl. Not long after that, something else happened. Something different, but just as unsettling. It was a weekend night, and a group of friends and I were rushing to catch a live music event at a local bar. We lost track of time and realized we had to leave immediately if we didn't want to miss the opening act. I grabbed my wallet and keys, and we hurried out to my car. We made it just in time. The night went on, drinks were had, and everything felt normal, until I reached into my pocket and realized my phone was gone. I checked every pocket again. Nothing. My friends helped me search the bar, under tables, near the stage, anywhere we'd been sitting or standing. Eventually, we tried calling it from someone else's phone. It rang twice. Then someone answered. "Hello?" I said. There was no reply, only slow, steady breathing on the other end. I started to speak again, but the call abruptly disconnected. I was irritated and assumed someone had stolen it. There wasn't much I could do at that hour, so I decided to deal with it the next day. Later that night, I dropped my friends off and drove home alone. During the drive, I replayed the evening in my head, trying to remember the last time I'd seen my phone. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the answer hit me. I remembered setting it down on my bed while getting ready. The realization sent a chill through me. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside cautiously. The house was quiet. I walked slowly to my bedroom and flipped on the light. My phone was lying on the bed, exactly where I remembered leaving it. I searched every room, checking doors, windows, closets, anything that might suggest someone had been inside. There was nothing, no signs of forced entry, no disturbance. That night, I barely slept. Every sound made my heart jump. I told my friends about it the next day, and we all agreed it was deeply unsettling. We talked about calling the police, but decided it likely wouldn't lead anywhere. Nothing else ever happened after that. Still, even now, I sometimes lie awake thinking about that call, and wondering who answered my phone when it was supposedly sitting on my bed the entire time.